and reminding those who are members and also the public gallery to switch off mobile phones so they don't interfere with the sound recording system, and the obligation to declare any relevant financial or other interests in relation to today's business, and also the volume on all tablet devices should be off. It brings us then on to apologies, and we have an apology from Karen McKevitt. I don't think they're in there as yet.
No, Chair, Karen's apology is the only one that we've had so far. She's
snowed up a lane somewhere in the Moors or somewhere. Next thing then is the draft minutes of the meeting on the 22nd of January, which are page 65. Yep. Cathal?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I think we agreed action last week in terms of we were looking to get a presentation. Some of the questions that were not answered last week, we're looking to get a presentation from the Ulster Scots Agency and indeed from the Magus Group, and I think that was agreed. I don't see it referred to within the minutes. There was a proposal.
What were the questions again?
Well, there were questions around governance and monies and things like that, and I think we'd actually maybe somebody proposed that we actually go and visit them, but that whatever way, I don't see it referred to.
Chair, apologies.
Don't see it referred to in the minutes.
We didn't record that as an agreement, but if members want to propose that now, a visit to the cultural hub.
It was certainly proposed or mentioned that the hub would be a possible venue for a future meeting. Certainly that was agreed.
We didn't log that as an agreement. Sorry.
Sorry. Well, it was mentioned. Sorry, it was mentioned that amongst a long list of future possible venues, because they have a meeting room there. In terms of a proposal that,
Chair, there was pertinent questions that were asked last week which we didn't get the answer to, and I would like to see.
But well, yeah. Was that in what context? Just to get some clarity around the issue.
Well, they were asked off the departmental officials, so I think it would be useful that we actually meet and see if we can get some clarification.
Hold on. There were questions when the folk were in from Forest and Gaeilge.
Well, Arthur Scott specifically was there.
Yeah, but the focus at that point was about Forest and Gaeilge.
Yeah, but there are questions around.
And just it would be helpful to know what those are.
Well, the questions were asked. I'm sure they'll be answered as of they published today.
Chair, so is that a proposal to go to the Cultural Hub and have a briefing from the Ulster Scots Agency, or separate, the Ulster Scots Agency comes for a briefing and the visit happens whenever it's scheduled in?
Well, it would be useful to have a briefing from the Ulster Scots and from Magus, and where it takes place doesn't matter, but if it can happen, it'd be good to visit there.
It would indeed be. In fact, I'm very much in favour of a visit. I think it's very informative. I think it's helpful if we just had some. Maybe you could help us there, Cathal, just what the issues were that you wanted asked about.
Well, there was issues around the production of a glossary and dictionary. There was issues about the funding that's gone through that. There was other issues that were brought up just on the day, and I don't have them offhand here, but.
Yeah. But Chair, you yourself have raised it a couple of times about a similar LIFA project, so I'd like to explore that.
Yes, how that has been followed up on, Chair, as well.
Yes, I think probably we'll be better informed on some of this in a few. I'm in contact with them about other things. In a few weeks' time, I think we would be better informed, because I think they'll be further along the road on some of the issues. Would that be acceptable?
What is? Sorry.
I'm saying that I happen to know the civil servant who works with Magus was away on holiday for 2 weeks there, so there's sort of been a wee break. But they will be in a better position to inform us, I think, on some of these things in a few weeks' time. If we arrange that for a few weeks from hence.
As soon as it's practically.
Yes, that's
possible.
fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Just another item, Chair. Chair, the agenda item, any other business, wasn't taken last week. I don't know why that was. I had asked for it actually, but you had adjourned the meeting before that was doable, and there was some concern from the members here present, but also from members not present here, about the manner in which last week's meeting was taken, and that we felt very much that our line of questioning, which is our statutory duty, was stymied to some extent. And I said that during the meeting, and others felt the same. With that in mind, and I have to say, particularly in terms of the Confederation of Ulster Bands, who seemed on the face of it quite keen to answer some of our questions, but you didn't allow them to do so. With that in mind, I would like to propose that maybe we bring them back so that we can actually ask a few pertinent questions in relation to the inquiry. I think it was...
Well, the questions, first of all, that were ruled out were ones that did not relate to the inquiry. I think that it was when one member raised the issue of Twiddell, for example. I intervened at that point on the basis that I had already intervened when Basil McCrae went down a different road for different reasons. Speak of the devil and David Ayres.
He's referred to you as the devil.
I said, speak of the devil and David Ayres.
Probably the same state as Mr. Humphrey, obviously. Here in body and not in spirit.
Right. The point there was that I think we need to be very careful that we stick to the remit of the inquiry, because otherwise it's unfair to people who come, in spite of their willingness. It also deviates from the purpose of the inquiry. And as chair of the meeting, chair of the committee, I ruled accordingly. I think it was perfectly in order to do so. I'm not sure that we got quite a bit of information from both Cultus and the Confederation of Ulster Bands. I would counsel against a further session on the basis that I think you will then open up all sorts of issues that will not be helpful to this committee, because people will then go down a road about having another organisation be brought back for further questions. So, any other comments?
Chair, I'll just say again, to reiterate, just as a feeling of a number of members of this committee, that we were not allowed to carry out our statutory duty in asking questions.
And you put that on record, and it's noted in the minute as well.
But I do believe that we should be asking at least the Confederation of Ulster Bands back.
Look,
Get some clarification. Allow them some clarification on their questions.
They spoke at length about a range of issues in regard to the subject matter of the inquiry. I did not see the relevance of some of the questioning, and there was no relevance to it in regard to some of these things.
Sir, do you want to address the issue about why any other business was not taken at the end of the meeting?
Well, we'll come to that in a moment.
It was an agenda item.
When we deal with the first item. Yes, Rosie.
Yes. Well, I have to say, Chair, that in the whole course of time I've been on this committee, that's the first time I've ever experienced that this has been a committee where the questioning has been liberal, that people have been free to ask their questions, all within the context of the remit of the CAL committee. Now, I was pursuing a particular line of question in response to the presentation. I have a rationale for why I wanted to take it down that route, and I believe it was within the remit of the inquiry. And I feel I would like to take that line of questioning up, and I would propose that we ask the band, the Federation of Marching Bands, to come back.
William?
Yeah, Chair. My recollection on last week's meeting in relation to the bands being here, it's very clear that whatever questions were asked were answered, that were relevant to the subject that they were here to talk about. And that's, I think the minutes will bear that out. However, there were other issues where two members in particular, wanted to take us down another road, no pun intended. And, you know, if that was fine, if people want to go down that road, I will then have questions as an elected member for North Belfast about how we get to the impasse that people wanted to raise, and the role that that party that they represent plays in that impasse. But that's not what we're here about. But if that's what we want to do, fine, I'm up for that, and I'll not walk away from that. But that's not going to get us to where we want to do in terms of this inquiry, which I instigated around the working class communities in particular being detached from the arts.
Any other?
Chair, the questions raised were not from one single party; they were from a number of parties, and that was the feeling in general that I knew from talking to members afterwards.
I mean, just bringing it back to the questions. The questions were about bands, about band behaviour. whatever line of question then another member might want to pursue with other parties beyond that. The fact of the matter is, we had the Confederation of Marching Bands in front of the committee, and my questions were relating to bands, band behaviour, and exploring how they can reach out, because the same questions were asked of Comhaltas Culture Ireland. So, I mean, it was very relevant. I still would like answers to those questions, and I would like to have an opportunity to fulfil my remit as a person, represent my party, and as a scrutiny member of this committee.
Oliver?
First of all, Rosie here made a proposal, and I'll second that. But in saying this thing about if a question's asked, then we'll go down another road, and I'll ask another question. You know, something out sort of threats like that there, oral threats like that there, is not helpful at all. If people would sit back and study, we're going into a new era of council. And councils have to put their community plans together. And whether you like it or not, inquiries, I guess, here will feed into community plans for councils. And part of this here is all about community cohesion, when you look through the community plans. Now, we have to grasp that nettle and discuss it. If this inquiry is about working class community, the arts and working class communities, the young lady who was chairing the meeting on behalf of the bands last week did say that bands were part of culture, part of the arts. I'm not arguing with the girl, but if that's the case, then it's relevant. The question is relevant to the presentation. And it's worth noting, Chair, that twice that you intervened to refuse a question to be asked, the young lady again did say she would take the question, was willing to answer the question. So, you know, and stifling that line of question, it's making some part of this inquiry irrelevant. And that's the point I'm coming from in a very quick way of explaining it, that we have to go down that road. Okay, some of the line of questioning might be uncomfortable, but we have to do it. We're adult enough to do it. If this inquiry is all about, we're going to come out the other end with a meaningful thing. So I would certainly second Rosie's proposal that we do invite back the Band Confederation.
Sorry, Russell, yes.
Can I make a suggestion? There was some difficulty in people pursuing lines of inquiry, and a number of people expressed frustration. But I do think there is also a genuine point that we were tending to drift off, maybe from the working class inclusion in the arts bit. I wonder if, by way of compromise, because I do actually think the engagement was pretty good, and the bands, seemed up for it, that maybe we could see if the band would be prepared to have an informal meeting with members of the committee, where we could actually start to talk about issues in the first place, which would not be directly relevant to the inquiry that we're doing, but that some questions might be answered. And depending upon how that went, then after that we might bring them back and do it as part of the inquiry. I just don't want to make it a huge fight, but I think it would. I think the bands were keen enough to engage, but I understand that you've got to try and keep us on track.
Two observations there. First is that the inquiry is quite clear that it's about the role of working class communities and their engagement with the arts and the relationship there, all of that. There is a separate issue which is about cultural expression, good relations, inclusion, all of that area. But that does not relate solely to the Confederation of Ulster Bands, and it relates to a number of cultural expressions. I would be very happy at a future point for us to look at that in that general way, because I think to single out one particular cultural expression and leave others out would undo, I think, some of the good work that has been done. I think we need to be inclusive in looking at the issue. But happy to look at that again in the future. So I accept your point there, Basil, that there is an issue there about, because one of the divisive issues in Northern Ireland is around cultural expression and cultural identity, and I've no issue with that at all. I think, yeah. Sorry, Oliver.
Yes, Chair, but Chair, you're saying that you'd be happy enough to look at that at some other time. With respect, it's not down to you to make that decision.
Sorry, but just say, Oliver, do you have a right to express a view?
Yeah, you agree, but you're in the chair, so you need to be expressing that view as an individual or if coming from the
I
chair.
have every right to express
making
a
that, if you're making that direction to the committee.
I'm not making any direction to the committee. I'm just expressing a view.
I'd say there's a proposal and a second on the table for an invite back again, so.
There's two, and William and then Cathal.
Chair, can I just, I've, excuse me, sympathy for what Mr McRae has said. I have no difficulty supporting a wider piece of work be done around the issue which he has touched on. I would welcome that, and I think the committee should do that. There's a specific piece of work. There were specific questions asked from the Coolness Group and the bands last week about the communities that they were here representing and speaking on behalf of, but whether there was a detachment or not. They both gave very clear answers, which I was pleased to hear. I think there's been a vote called for. I think we should move to the vote.
Okay. How would you do it, Cathal?
Yeah, Chair, just not wishing to rehash it, but one of my questions which was ruled out last week was and is relevant to the inquiry into participation across communities in the arts, was in reference to Section 75 compliance, and that was ruled out last week. So I think that was very, very relevant. But there has been a proposal, and I'm happy to move to it.
Before we go to a vote, I'd just like to say that one of the things that characterises this committee is that actually it gets on pretty well together, and it does have a way of asking questions and doing things. So I wonder if, like, my colleagues across the table would just consider giving us 1 week before we had a look at it. That I wonder if the clerk might actually look to see if there's a way that we could come up with something that is meets the needs of everybody. Just rather than go for votes, which you force people into positions which I don't think is really where we want to go. I am fully supportive of. I think it was excellent you having the engagement and asking, the hard questions that you wanted to ask. But we could do it in a better way, and you do have support for people widening out the discussion. So I just wondered if maybe rather than push it to a vote now, you would just wait. You can push it to vote next week if you want to, but maybe you would just give the clerk a week to just see if we could sort something out to our mutual satisfaction.
Okay. Oliver or Cathal?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I actually won't be here next week, and I'd like to be part of this. I actually feel that the inquiry can't be concluded because I feel there's a valuable part of the discussion that I haven't had yet, and I mean that really sincerely. I'd like to hear those views, and I'm not sure if it would count unless it happens in the same way as all the other ways that we have had presentations for this inquiry.
So you want to proceed with your proposal?
I would like to proceed with my proposal.
Okay.
Chair, we've had a discussion around this now for about half an hour or so. The fact of the matter is, I'm not in any way about stemming debate or whatever. I think our party feels that the questions that were asked were relating to and pertaining to the issue which the witnesses were brought forward to this committee to answer were answered in relation to the piece of work and the evidence gathering we're doing. So I proceed we move to the vote.
Proposal, if you just repeat it, please.
Yes, I propose that we request of the Confederation of Marching Bands or Ulster Bands, can't remember the exact title, that they come back to the committee so that we can continue with the line of question that we want to pursue.
Seconder for that, please.
Oliver.
Oliver, okay. All those in favour of the proposal? All those against?
Have we any official Have we any official abstentions? So
No.
we have one.
Okay.
So
It's 3,
4 against, and 1 abstention.
Okay.
So the motion does not.
Okay. Okay. Brings us then to the Minutes, we're dealing with those. Agreement the minutes are an accurate record of the meeting. Are members agree to that? Okay. Next item is the decal briefing on the Community Festivals Fund, and the clerk's memo is at page 70. There's a decal briefing paper at page 72. There's also a research paper which was done for us, which was presented to the committee on the 11th of January, and that's at page 100. We have with us then Angela McAllister and Patricia McCann. Thank you. You're welcome indeed, Angela and Patricia. Do you want to make your opening statement, please, to us?
Sure. I want to thank the committee for the invitation to speak today on the Community Festivals Fund. The Community Festivals Fund has been in operation since 2006, and following the transfer of responsibility for events to DETI, DECAL remained the sponsor of the fund, and it has been administered by the local councils since 2008. Decisions on funding approvals, assessment of applications and levels of funding to be allocated are the responsibility of local councils. The budget for Community Festivals funds has historically been £450,000 per year. 90% is allocated to councils according to population, the remaining 10% according to income deprivation levels, as measured by the Northern Ireland Multiple Deprivation Measure. DECAL economists evaluated the scheme in 2012 and made a number of recommendations. These have been considered by the Department in conjunction with the councils, and a revised policy and guidance framework has been developed, which will be the subject of a public consultation. The committee carried out its own research into the evaluation findings and suggested ways in which methodologies could be developed to assist with assessing the outcomes of the scheme more objectively. Recommendation 1 stated that the fund should have a clearer aim and purpose, and it is proposed that the purpose of CFF should now sit within the context of DECAL's corporate plan, a priority within which is to enhance the quality of life through participation and engagement in culture. Recommendation 2 stated that the Department should consider whether community festivals need to concentrate more on festivals which are primarily focused on communities. The draft framework proposes that community festivals must be culture-based and must demonstrate strong community participation, and further proposes that commercial and largely fundraising events should be excluded from the criteria. Recommendation 3 stated that the Department should revisit its general criteria for community festivals. The Department proposes to expand the criteria to specify that festivals should target poverty and social exclusion and address rural isolation issues where appropriate. Recommendation 4 stated that the specific objectives needed to be set. The Department proposes that the objectives are expanded to include supporting the community and voluntary sector, targeting poverty and social exclusion, and enabling partnership working between the community and voluntary sector and local councils. Recommendation 5 suggested that more resources needed to be allocated to training and support to festival groups and organisers. The Department proposes that the new targets will require councils to provide support and training to ensure that 80% of the training needs committed to at application stage are met, and further proposes that the councils will complete a training needs analysis to illustrate how training needs have been met. Recommendation 6 stated that outcomes should be monitored more closely. The Department notes the Committee's point about consideration being given to the use of surveys in an attempt to make analysis more objective. Councils will be asked to continue to evaluate the fund annually and provide specific additional information on how they have met the targets. Recommendations 7 and 8 are in relation to simplifying the application process and encouraging more applications from disadvantaged areas. The Department has worked with councils to design a composite application template which reflects best practice, and this will be made available to councils to tailor their specific needs if they so wish. And the councils will be asked to proactively market community festivals amongst disadvantaged communities, and this will be assessed and measured by the Department. A draft policy and guidance framework has been developed in conjunction with the councils and has been made available to the committee, and the Department intends to issue this for public consultation, and the intention is to have revised agreed arrangements in place in 2015-16. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Any questions? Chair, Cathal. Oh, sorry, Cathal.
Yes, Chair, thank you please for the presentation. The Community Festivals Fund is a very important fund for for a lot of the smaller community festivals right across the north. But I suppose that's maybe where the shortcoming comes in, and certainly from a rural constituency, the gripe that community festivals have there is that the biggest end of the funding, I think you actually quoted 90% is allocated according to population, or 10% according to the deprivation indices. So what we find in real terms is that that 90% goes almost exclusively to Belfast. Considerable percentage, and I think maybe last year or 2 years ago it was somewhere in the region of 8%, went to Derry, and the rest, what was left, went elsewhere. How do you counter that sort of argument, particularly from some of the best community festivals that are rural based?
Yeah, and some of the larger ones have been rural based in the past as well. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the 90%, 10%. I mean, as I say, if we're going out to public consultation, it would be useful to have give some consideration to that. We're asking that specific question. If we can certainly ask it.
Yeah.
And see how and we have contained a new criteria that rural needs must be addressed. But as I say, that is a desirable criteria as proposed. But I do take your point that it could be prioritised.
Yeah, because I think of festivals that have been running for some time, and they're really hand to mouth. That are based within the rural community, and they're not getting. And okay, this is not a major source in terms of actual fund, in terms of money as such. But nonetheless, it might be the difference between a festival surviving or going under. So, thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Just following on from that, just to clarify, you said when you're going out to consultation, when would that be?
If everyone's content with the document, this is what the document we propose to go out with. So in the next couple of weeks, once we get the logistics confirmed, we want to get out as soon as possible and keep the consultation open for about 8 to 12 weeks. We're conscious that the new councils are embedding in. So we want to get their reviews and give them 12 weeks to prioritise that as to respond to and put the arrangements in from next year.
Right. And the other bit there, it was mentioned 90% of the money went to Belfast. Is that correct?
I'll get back to you on that. I don't have those figures with me, but I can.
Okay. Oliver Mullen and then David Hildy.
Can you come back to me, Chair? I'm sort of in the middle of putting a question together. Could you come
Okay.
back to me, please?
David?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Angela, for your presentation. Just on the needs of training and support, and again, it's particularly local councils. As you've indicated, local councils are going through, obviously, there's a massive amount of work out there at the minute, and probably the last thing that needs another consultation at whatever it is, particular stage, and whether you get an in-depth response from some of them might be questionable as well. But obviously the Local Communities Fund will be driven from organisations below council, maybe regeneration partnerships or rural communities and whatnot stuff. Is there any opportunity for additional training or support in drilled down through to the different levels or tiers?
Yeah, that is the intention, that those groups would receive the training and they would articulate what they need as part of the application process, and then the councils then are responsible for ensuring that at least 80% of that are met. Take your point about the councils. We have consulted with the current council regime and drawing up the policy and guidance framework, so it shouldn't be a shock. But we deliberated as whether or not to go out to public consultation, and we felt on balance we would like the views of the super councils if possible, just to make sure that it remains a priority within, if possible, within the new structure.
Because prior to now, maybe the rural communities have been a wee bit suspicious of the allocations, or maybe not banned it potentially. But now that we're moving down to a lesser number of councils, there's other communities now may feel isolated in the process as well eventually, whereby there's maybe a drift of power to certain larger councils.
Yeah, and the geographical splits may have changed as well, so we felt we wanted to consult with the new councils if possible.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, Oliver.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. When you look at the deprivation levels, that in itself can be restrictive to festivals in rural areas, actually, because if you look at some of the urban areas of a higher deprivation level and some of the real rural areas, so in that sense there, this is the problem of this festival fund, that basically what I'm saying is, are you going to rural-proof your decisions? And that's, I think, pivotal to what, if you're going to be talking to the new council groupings, That would have to be part of it. Secondly, with no community plans in place, it's going to be difficult to talk to the new councils as to what their plans really are going forward. Now, I agree with a lot of the things you've said this morning already, but I think without a community plan in place, it's going to be difficult, and I wouldn't like to think that this festival be rushed through councils before councils actually carry out their consultation with the public as to how they're going to put the community plan together, what funding they're going to have. This festival fund, when it comes out from yourselves, is it still funded by council as well, or is there another top-up? And for marching bands, does marching bands now have to prove they're part of a festival? Because before, when they get funding, I think it was prior to 2829 or something like that there, they didn't have to say, and the money was given out. Plus the top up from council. So those are the sort of things we need to find out. Basically, community cohesion, I do think, is pivotal to all of this here. Good festivals out there, yes, but I think unless the criteria is tightened up in such a way, we could see a plethora of festival applications coming in, which really don't really lean to festivals. It could be sort of, how would you say, community-based festivals. And that has to widen out a wee bit, because these new councils now are very much, you'll have very much, some of the councils will be urban, majority on the councils will be urban rather than rural. And that clear line has got to be defined through the council's community plans if they're going to drive it. Thank you. I may want to come back and on that one.
Angela?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the final decision will be rural proof, so we'll work with DARD on that. It's an example of best practice in policy making, so that hopefully that gives some reassurance. Yeah, you make a good point. There's no community plans in place yet. DCAL has a dedicated resource who is working with the councils on community planning, and most of our arm's length bodies are going to be statutory consultees as part of that as well. But yeah, the timing is maybe not perfect. I accept that. And yes, the proposal in the revised guidance is that the community festivals are community led and what the community wants. So that's the shift in that. So that is the proposal, and we'll wait and see what we get back from that.
Okay, William Humphrey.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. I mean, I remember declaring that this is a former Belfast City Council, but I remember this being launched by Edwin, and I was very much encouraged by it because I thought this fund was something that was going to be across the country, across the community, and across the cultures, and I think it was a welcome step at that time. But can I just check, having listened to some of the questioning this morning, it is the case, is it not, that this fund is distributed to local councils based on the rate base in the council and the population in there?
It's 90% on population and 10% then on the levels of deprivation within the council area at currently, But I
just wanted to establish that because I think there maybe isn't clarity around that, listening to some contributions. So what then happens is local councils are asked to match some of that funding. Is that still the case?
Yes, that's right. Still the proposal, yeah.
So if those councils don't match the funding, the money then that you will have offered them goes back to the centre and redistributed. And if I'm right, Belfast, for example, would get more money because Belfast steps up to the plate and provides that initial and then that secondary match funding.
Well, yes, the match funding is linked. So yes, if a council assesses applications and gets them to the criteria and they decide to fund it, then DCAL will provide the match funding. So
it's absolutely fair. The initial distribution is absolutely fair and equitable. If they don't match fund it, they don't get it.
Yes, and for some reasons there may be underspends, maybe applications weren't up to scratch, or festivals had to be cancelled. So sometimes our allocation doesn't match the spend, but it's, I mean, for acceptable reasons, I would think.
Yeah.
Just following on from that question, might be helpful to inform thinking around this. if we had the figures
Yes.
for council spend and decal spend per council area,
Yeah.
and some indication of whether the council took up 100% or 90% or whatever percentage of the money that was potentially theirs, because we've pointed out in the past that some councils are quite different in their view of spend on arts and culture. A huge differential there. So if we could have that maybe information, and maybe back over, this started in 2008. Prior to that it was the events company,
Yes.
and then prior to that it was the Northern Ireland office. Started it.
Yeah, I hadn't quite finished, Chair.
Oh, sorry, apologies.
Yes,
What
and I think,
minute is that
no, I won't require counsel. I think there's a much better way of doing it than what was there hitherto before, in terms of the events company, and I think that's why it was welcomed. But I would say that, you know, fair play to Belfast, if Belfast steps up and makes the contributions and to ensure that the money is drawn down, because everybody has the opportunity to do that. And if councils don't use their initial rates money to match the funding, then that's not Belfast's fault. You know, so that's situation, however, will be addressed whenever we have these 11 new super councils that will have a greater rate base, greater resource and disposable income that should enable them to match the funding. So, you know, they will be hopefully in a position to take some of the funding that hitherto they haven't taken or have been unable to take. Thanks very much, Chair.
I'm just
Yes,
sorry.
I'd like to make that information available to you. Do you understand? It's very pertinent to your consideration of it. So, are you asking for then a breakdown by council of drawdowns, allocations,
Yes.
overspends and numbers? Yeah.
And back over here to see are there trends that developed over from
Since
2008?
2008.
Yeah. And how long did the events company have control of the festival funding?
Events company, 2006, 2 years.
So they were in it for from 2006. And when did it really start with the Northern Ireland office?
I'm not sure of the historical position on it, Chair.
Could you actually maybe find out for us, since the function transferred across, just if you're incorporating in your own from 2008, if you'd put in the events company 2006
Okay.
figures, 2007, and if there was some indication even just back before that, to get a picture of over that period from around, I think this really started around the 1990s. You've got a period of not far short of 20 years, and to see patterns of spend and so on would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Best.
Rosie McCordy.
Gurmaya Carly, thank you, Chair. Agus Gurmaya Carlacher, thank you for the presentation. Can I just ask about social benefits in relation to community festivals? And how do you measure these, and how successful have community festivals been in achieving social outcomes, and what sort of social outcomes would you be talking about?
The social benefits are being measured and analysed by the councils. They do an evaluation to the department. So we're trying to. The committee has suggested the use of tailored surveys to specifically ask questions and draw out the benefits, rather than a subjective analysis by the festival organisers, because sometimes that might be skewed in one way. So we're looking at not only attendance but participation, have skills with the use of volunteers, that type of information drawn in, and that's a key focus of the purpose of it, is for social cohesion, and we'll use or work with our statistical colleagues and economists to see how that can be best measured and valued.
And do you feel there has been success in achieving social outcomes?
Yeah, the evaluation concluded that it had been successful in terms of that, but some of that measure was quite subjective. So we're going to try and make it in the new process a bit more objective.
So you say that it's the council who does that, but do they include input from the festival organisers?
Yes.
Because presumably it'll be on the ground. That
It comes, it
there
feeds
will
up
be
from on the
valuable
ground.
information.
Yeah, it comes from the festival organisers and participants and the community.
Okay, can I ask about community relations benefits from festivals? How important is that
Yes, that's still part of the criteria that they will assess with community cohesion and building community relations. And we will ask festival organisers, participants, outsiders to give us some evidence of that. Again, it will be mostly qualitative, but we want to start and to try and measure this more objectively as we move forward into the new process.
Okay, Gurmaiwit, thank you.
Councillor McRae.
Thank you. Why are we consulting?
We thought it was timely. We took a decision on balance that we wanted to go out to the new super councils
And
and
ask,
make sure and ask them, are they happy with the revised guidance, and how maybe to make sure it can be prioritised within their new work structures and community plans.
because the recommendations and so on that come down here are not awfully inspiring. You know, that the need to have clearer defined ambition and a whole range of things, but we're not really sure if it's doing any good or not. And when the research show came across, it said it also agreed with the finding, the valuation, that the success of the fund has been difficult to measure. So I'm at a loss as to know if there's any purpose to having this fund at all.
Perhaps having the fund or the consultation.
The fund. I mean, one of the things you might consult on is whether we should be having this fund, but £450,000 divided through a large number of councils, I mean, does it actually do any good?
Can I ask the question? Certainly as part of the consultation.
I'm just saying to you that the whole thing, I don't mean it to be sort of unhelpful, but it all seems to be a bit loony. You know, it's all sort of, well, we've been dishing this money out for some time and it's a bit here and a bit here. I just wonder if someone was to come back and say to me, you know, this is the targeted thing that we want to intervene on and we're going to concentrate our funds on this, I think I would be happier with it than just general sort of, we've got a wee bit of money coming around and if you know about it you can get it and if you don't, you don't. So I think it should be addressing that aspect of in your consultation.
Thank you.
I might. What's your assessment of it?
My assessment of the fund. Well,
Yeah.
I think it brings valuable benefits to communities, and it does encourage people to get involved in the arts, and hopefully that will continue that interest and appetite. And
What would be? Where is it most successful? What's the best example? Best examples of, I mean, that come to mind of it being used.
Heart of the Glens Festival.
why this focus is going to be community-led, we believe that the festivals that have been more successful in the past have been community-led and owned. So they seem to be the most successful, as opposed to commercial-led ones, which is where we're proposing they are not funded anymore.
And would there be a different? Okay, so there's commercial, there's community. Would you? Is there a difference between council-led? Is the council-led initiative different to a community-led initiative?
Yes, there would be community-led initiatives that are prioritised within the fund. The council can support, but the interest for the community festival must come from the community.
I just said to you,
I suppose the council may be trying to get visitors into the area. That's a different type of.
yeah, my contribution to your consultation is that I'm really supportive of grassroots people trying to do things, and we should help them in that. But I worry. My last point on it is to say, I worry when you get into matched funding that it just gets subsumed into the council doing general good, and so people don't actually realise the benefit of the fund. And I think there is an issue, but we need to clearly differentiate what the fund is for and why it's there and what the outcomes of it are. So we're concluding that basis. Thank you.
Leslie?
Yes, thanks, Chair. My question is really in the same area. The report concludes that the festivals really didn't show sustainability in getting matching funds, but there's no evidence of that. There's no clear evidence of anything in that respect. What is your view in that statement?
Yeah, the evaluation concluded that it didn't make festivals less reliant on public funding, but the committee report did point out that there wasn't really the evidence to back that up in terms of there was 9 council areas that there was no data for, including Belfast. So the focus on the new arrangement is not to make festivals less reliant on public funds, because even contradictorily, the report also said that for festivals to maintain at the current levels, there was a need for public subsidy. So in this round, we're saying the objective isn't to make festivals less reliant, it's to make them more community-led and to get more benefits at that level. So I do accept that point. Yes.
What about sponsorship? Has that been explored?
In terms of
Local sponsorship for local festivals?
Yeah. I mean, the funding, the festival still can bring in funding from other sources in terms of sponsorship and all of that. That still will be allowed under the arrangements.
But that's obviously another form of sustainability, isn't it?
Yes, that's true.
I think it's important that because it is erroneous that statement and not backed up, so
Okay.
it gives the wrong flavour. Thanks, Chair.
Oliver?
Yes, Chair, just coming back on that there, more than that, Basil brought up a point there, and I think Basil's point really ends up on community plans. When we look at when he talks about the benefit of the festival, yes, that some outsiders may be a relevant question, but the benefit of this here is going to be the feedback from councils and how they feed into this community plan. Now, this is why I wouldn't like to think that this festival fund is done and dusted before the plan is done and dusted. And that's going to take maybe, the present minister has allowed councils to wander into 2016 before they even finish their community plans. And it's a bit of a problem, to say the very least. And I know some of the festivals that got funding out of the council, single council, were actually a lifeline for rural areas. It's one of the best things that happened to them. Now, when we go into the bigger council, we're consuming maybe 4 councils together. And for those councils to put this money together for community festivals, again, it's going to take a little bit of time. So I think this what you're doing now and not be done maybe to the middle of the year, maybe further. On the rate space, if you looked at in the rate space, they change the rates when you get into these councils now. That some of these councils are going to get a hike in rates, will be subsidised for, I don't know, 2 to 3 years until they find their feet. So will that be taken into account, the actual rise in the rates, even though they're not paying them, when you're considering the festival fund on the rate space? And also, the other question I want to ask is, can a single entity apply to the festivals fund? Because I'm looking through records here, and again, it was a question I asked on marching bands, and I see at least 10 or 12 of them here who have got funding from the festivals fund, matched by councils, and there's no evidence there that they were part of a festival. So the criteria of a festival needs to be looked at. It's all right saying you're having a festival, that's fine, but the criteria for a festival and what actually is a festival needs to be clearly looked at. And when we talk about having community cohesion, I would like to think that community cohesion would take the form of discussion, not just saying we notified this or that or the other. It needs to take discussion, and that's got to be proven in a lot of cases that there's discussion has taken place, because if it's not, that community cohesion is maybe not be there. But on the last thing here is that when we talk about Belfast putting the bigger money up, and if they get the bigger money, well, if this festival is rural-proofed, that will certainly go a long way to counteracting that one, the 90% going into Belfast and the 10% in the country, because you have got to make the case that if we rural-proof anything, we've got to look at the actual criteria of rural-proofing as against what you're doing now. You understand?
Yeah.
I might be not putting it too well to you, but rural-proofing would need to be into your criteria of assembling your criteria of the festival fund. It would have to be pivotal to that, the rural-proofing. Thank you, Chair.
Just following on, if I could ask a couple of questions there. terms of rural areas, does DARD put any money into this?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Was there any approach to DARD to put some money into it?
Not in my time, Chair. But
It does seem, in terms of, they are not just agriculture, it's also rural development.
yes,
And, the issues were raised in the past in terms of, for example, social development department not putting money into smaller villages under whatever it is, 4,000 people. Then the point was made that that was really the responsibility of DARD the two could cooperate. And you might have, but it would just be interesting to see if DARD has some interest in that. The other thing there was, so just, oh yes, have you looked at the capacity of an area or community, whether it be geographical community or community of interest, to put together a good proposal and a good festival? Is very much dependent on the strength of the community infrastructure and the cultural infrastructure in the area. I think there are plenty of examples of communities that have festival one year and then they get themselves in a whole handling because they don't have the capacity in terms of managing or health and safety or whatever the issue might be. Has there been any look at how that impacts on the drawdown, the applications, and is there some developmental work that needs to be done, or even there are some really large festivals that have over the years done very well out of festival funding, and is there something there around if you've? I'm just thinking there of that odd situation where the decal says if you get money out of the bands fund, you can't get it for the next 7 years or something. There's something there maybe about having a quota. Are those things that have been looked at all?
well, capacity building, was pointed out in the evaluation, and that more emphasis on funding and resource should go into supporting communities and training. We're trying to strengthen that under the new guidance.
And that would be most relevant, I would have thought, for smaller festivals.
Yeah.
If you're a large festival, you've obviously got your act together, and you're, if you have a festival that say maybe has 10 full-time staff,
Yeah.
you're not needing much development work there.
No.
Whereas if you're entirely reliant on volunteers, they're the folk who do need the support.
The evaluation does sort of recommend that.
And the full report is on the internet for people, so when they're responding to this, they'll be able to get
Yes.
access to.
Yeah, we'll put a link to that, yeah.
Right, okay, thank you. That's everyone, thank you very much. Right,
Just on what you said there, Chair, earlier on the numbers, you'd be wandering into the area of maybe regional development, because if you go into the countryside, even rural is down to figures. There's different bands, A, B, up to F, different bands, different numbers, population. Where, for example, there was money given out to urban regeneration that didn't come into the rural area, and that needs to be defined as well. Again, rural proofing would be pivotal to all of what you quite rightly brought up there. But if we must define what is a festival, because there's nothing to stop on what I see there of one group coming in for a small festival that really isn't a festival. I think there need to be a criteria of what a festival actually is.
I think I have no experience of it beyond Belfast, but I mean there was a clear definition there about the duration and the other characteristics that it could not be a single event.
Well, I've been involved in one now for a number of years, and the hoops that we have to go through to get it. And when we do, it really is a lifeline for that time of year, and carries you right into the winter time. And it goes for a week, not just. We have a lot of festivals, and I think we need to be looking at I call them one-day festivals, you know, and that needs to be looked at. And this-
And yet I can think of small estates, state maybe of, say, 400 houses.
Yeah. There needs to be a criteria for that.
But for them,
That's their
a
festival.
single-day festival is all that they can
That's
cope
correct.
with.
That's where I'm saying that there needs to be a definition of this word festival.
Could you actually, would you have the definitions that are currently used by the 26 councils?
We have a proposed definition in our revised policy and guidance framework, but are you looking for the individual?
Yeah, just
Because
to know what
councils
they
have a
are
diff-
at the moment, see,
Yeah,
you've obviously picked out of them the best things to put together
Emergence,
into
yeah.
your,
yeah.
not wanting to reinvent the wheel. You've done that, but it'd be helpful just to see, was there anything there that they had that was a brilliant idea that maybe
Yeah,
would be useful?
well, that's useful, I'll do that.
Is your definition going to be imposed then on the councils?
No, this is whatever they decide to define underneath it, it must complement our overarching framework.
Oh, so that you will have a basic definition they can add to it,
Yes,
but they can't take away from it?
yes, that's the proposal.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Lovely. Very simple.
They contact you sometime, will they? Give you my
Surprise, Chair.
email.
They know who I am, they'll ask.
All right, thank you for going out.
You're enjoying this compared to the bench, I think.
Oh, yeah.
It's different.
No, no.
Just one point here the clerk wants to raise. If you-
Chair, just from the budget session earlier, we need to get on the record committee agreement to write to the department and ALBs for their savings delivery plans. If members are content to agree to that.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Go on, well, I think we've asked them for a piece of information. Not sure of any other actions we won't take at this stage. Brings us on then to the decal briefing on the update on Casement Park, and that's at page 114 in your pack there, and the briefing paper is at page 117.
You staying all day, will you?
But you wouldn't know whether he was staying all day. You'd never know.
He doesn't communicate very well.
You have to be here to be
Yes. Brings us then to page 117 and welcome Rory Buscali, the State Programme Director, and invite Rory, thanks for coming in, if you could make your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman, committee members. I'm here today to give an update and take any questions on the Casement Park project. I'll start off by giving an executive synopsis of a briefing paper I've previously submitted, if that's acceptable. Background, DCAL was allocated £110 million by the executive to deliver the regional stadium projects, which included £62.5 million for the redevelopment of the Casement Park site. The commencement of construction work at Casement Park is currently delayed because on the 18th of December, Justice Horner quashed the existing planning approval on the Casement Park project. As at the 31st of March, the total spend on Casement Park was circa £5.1 million. And due to the outcome of the judicial review, the various easements were put in place, which resulted in an easement of circa 16 million and 6 million respectively through October and January monitoring rounds. I've included in the report a succinct summary of the spend profile on the project to date and going forward, which is as at today's position and has been advised at the AFP. Fundamentally, the strong resolve both within the Ulster GAA and the department to carry on the good work, build on the good work and submit a new planning application in 2015 in order to deliver this executive endorsed investment in the format of a regional stadium at Casement Park. Clearly, as we'll discuss any new planning application, we'll have to take stock of the content, outcomes and actions of the JR process. I've noted, just as the background as I referred to, Casement Park is contained as part of an executive programme for government pledge, and it remains a key priority for ourselves, GAA. As a note, the condition in which the funding was secured for the regional stadia programme has meant that the department cannot use the money allocated for it for other ancillary capital projects. We're currently working with GAA in order to take forward the programme. The backdrop, I thought it would be useful just in the context that, say, Casement sits within the wider regional. Within the briefing notes, I've noted that the Rugby Kingspan Stadium has previously been completed, with the final aspect of the Education and Heritage Centre being completed in March 15. Windsor Park's physically on site, progressing very well, with construction works anticipated to be completed later on in November of this year. The related adjacent Olympia Leisure Centre and the joint investment of DCAL has progressed to site construction start, and it's an excellent project being taken forward in partnership with Belfast City Council. I think it would just be important to note that the ongoing work in terms of the delivery of socio-economic opportunities and benefits continues at a pace. We're carrying out a post-project evaluation on lessons learned from rugby. We're undertaking a number of actions in order to support these lessons learned in Windsor and ultimately in Casement Park and other projects by the department. Just finally say the department's continuing to progress the arrangements with Belfast City Council for further leisure and community facilities adjacent to the stadia, and we've reached an agreement with Belfast City Council on a community benefits fund to deliver a programme that will benefit communities within Belfast. The Council have committed £100,000 a year to this fund for up to a 10-year period, and we're moving to provide supporting match funding contributions from the respective governing bodies and other potential funders. So that concludes my submission, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, first of all, Councillor Hashim.
Thank you, Rory. Rory, I suppose it's welcome that the Minister has recommitted and the GA has recommitted to Casement, and that's given some sort of clarity in that. In terms of the 5.1 million already spent in that, is there any sort of further breakdown in terms of that?
Yes, there will be a detailed breakdown. That was a combination of development costs to support the taking the project to the stage it was at. It would have included a number for integrated consultancy team fees. It would have included development costs for the funding of staff, project sponsor costs, etc., independent technical assessors, etc. The normal sort of development costs that would be incurred in progressing a capital project to the stage where it's ready then to move into the construction phase. So a large part of it would be the stepping through the development of the detailed design from feasibility to a stage where you have a design which was used to secure tenders and ultimately as a vehicle to deliver the capital project.
Okay. And see, in terms of the court costs that came about in the case of the 18th of December, that was almost exclusively to DOE. Was there any implications for DCAL on that?
The court, the JR. The first thing I would say is that no formal order has yet been issued by the court in terms of the awarding of costs. We expect that'll be received in the next matter of weeks, so no formal order has been made yet. I understand that the normal procedure is that JR costs fall with the notice parties, and the department was not a notice party to proceedings. It was GAA and DOE. There was a protective costs order granted by the applicant in the form of MORA, which would fall to DOE along with their own costs and the GAA costs. So until the full scale up cost order is made available, that's the current status.
It's unlikely then to actually fall to the DCAL department?
There's no direct cost to DCAL.
Oh, there is no.
Okay. There will be areas of eligible grant, for want of a better word, under the development costs.
And obviously any further delay will have financial implications. So what sort of, how's the timescale looking as of now?
We see the first thing has been to study the determination by George Horner very carefully and understand the full implications, and start and develop a full action plan in order to address the matters raised. That will culminate in a new application. Whilst with the detail has to be finally developed in conjunction with GAA, it's clear to me, I would anticipate that would be later on this year, around August, before a full planning submission would be made, with fundamentally all required consultations, traffic impact assessments, ecological studies, etc., being carried out in order to submit a fully robust planning submission.
Okay, Gordon Dunn.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much for coming in again. Just clarify how much has been spent to date on casement. I see a figure here for the 31st of March, but how much to date has been spent?
If maybe I can just advise the member that certainly to the 31st of March, 5.1 million, and the projections to the 31st of March of 15, which is on track, it would be a further 1.6 million. So that would generate a total projected to the end of March this year of 6.7 million.
You still haven't planning permission? Right. The cost has been mentioned. Well, any idea how much the cost is going to be? Of the judicial review?
No, the cost, as outlined, would fall to the DOE and the GAA. Clearly, there's a combination of senior counsel, solicitors' fees, and
yeah,
associated with that.
Yeah, as you've said, there have been a number of issues raised as an outcome of the hearing. How are you going to address those issues? You've obviously a number of things that need addressed. There's going to be a lot of, obviously, consultation with the planners, with residents, and with the GAA and so on. How do you see that proceeding?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that out of the 10 grounds that the application was brought, the key area was around the assessment in respect of the EOE's establishment of baseline capacity and established rights. There were a number of other areas cited around safety concerns, Japanese knotweed, asbestos contamination, and wider ancillary use. But fundamentally, the core aspect of the judgment related to the capacity to have the infrastructure accommodate 38,000 spectators. The ruling did not find material fault with the scale or mass of the stadium as designed, and focus therefore is around the assessment in terms of the 38,000 capacity, the existing infrastructure and the respective transport to and from there. The establishment of the baseline capacity needs to be taken forward, in my view, on a fundamentally evidence-based approach. As in the previous application, the safety certificate that was in place and was live and valid and was deemed at the time an appropriate vehicle by the DOE, on which the baseline capacity was circa 32,000, and that generated, therefore the analysis was on the uplift of the difference between the 32 and the 38,000. So fundamentally focus on the robustness of whatever baseline position is used in the next submission is clearly the key issue, both for DOE Planning Service, the GAA and ourselves.
So what capacity are you going to move forward on?
Well, presently we're carrying out a study in order to take stock of the ruling and also determine what would be an appropriate baseline capacity. And
it's yet to be established then?
Sorry?
The capacity is yet to be established, yet to be finalised?
No, the capacity, well, it's what we are doing is going through an exercise that will fundamentally test how Copper fastened an application for the 38,000, which the planning process found no fault with the scale and mass for would be. And that I believe is fundamentally prudent, given that this was a core area of focus in the planning process.
So how are you going to reconcile that with the objections of residents, and what process are you going to put in place to consult with residents? And obviously, out of that, those have outcomes to present to the planning service.
Any new application will require a full consultation process, and steps are starting to be made to be planned for that over the forthcoming months.
And how will that proceed?
Well, on a number of fronts, there's a programme, as for any planning process, around stakeholder consultation. Part of the ruling did focus on the implications of domestic and European law in terms of the effect on local communities, etc. So the GAA are developing an action plan with specific targeted resource around their aid expertise to carry out a fully robust engagement process.
Thank you.
Directly with the residents?
With the appropriate internal and external resources required.
Sorry, Chair, just one point. Will they be going, will they engage in a direct process, or will they rely on the planning service system
No,
for
sorry.
engagement?
It would not be the remit of the planner services, certainly not to deliver the engagement, but to be satisfied that sufficient detailed consultations were taking place. So, no, that's a deliverable in terms of the applicant, the GAA, and their team of both internal and external.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Just to clarify, when you say scale and mass, you're talking there about capacity as well?
No, I say that from the physicality of the design, in terms of the design.
You could cope with 38,000, in other words?
No, my comments related to that the technical process to assess the scale, mass, design, aesthetic function, etc. of the stadium as designed was not found to be flawed. Yes, it was a stadium to deliver 38,000. I think a key part is there is not an immediate direct correlation between capacity and scale and mass stadium design. So things like high ball lines, etc. will stay in play regardless of scale and mass. The investment fundamentally is for a regional stadium, and so there's a certain number of parameters that the investment was predicated on, is underpinned on, and must retain.
I'm just, there was a gentleman, I can't recall his name, I think he may have been the Ulster president or something of the GAA, was on the radio saying they were still going for the 38,000. Is that the figure that's been worked on at the moment?
GAA is still committed to a stadium that will develop and fit the strategic growth of the GAA.
That will fit 38,000?
Until, I believe it'll be a month until we have, we're in a position to fully advise and inform.
But in a month's time or so, or 5 weeks or whatever it is, you would be able to answer that question?
Because obviously that's clearly a key part of the consultation process that's required.
Okay, so, thank you. Leslie Cree.
Thank you very much, Chair. You're really on my area there as well. The judicial review talked about the project, if I can call it that, simply has been okay. It's all the surrounding infrastructure that wasn't up to scratch. Would that be an oversimplification?
It's a large part of the thrust. I will acknowledge that there were concerns around a few specific project-related matters. In the scale of things, the collective feedback is that it was around the consultation of those matters. So whilst Japanese knotweed is a common problem in construction projects, and there's tried and tested measures that were reflected, it was around the consultation process with the wider neighbours around how that work would be done was found to be lacking. So it would be fair to say there were minor issues in respect to the project, but the fundamental thrust was around the baseline capacity and the ability for ingress and egress of 38,000 people to and from there.
So obviously, you make the point, and I think you've reiterated this morning here, that these things need to be kept in mind, because otherwise you could end up in a similar situation again, which is what none of us want.
Absolutely, and that's why I think taking the time, not only the detailed assessment of the points raised and where they fell in the ruling, but also the action plan. We will not start to do the same thing in the same way with the same people.
That's right.
Because we'll get the same
In the old
outcome.
days, there was somebody said, look, I'm sorry,
No.
this is overdevelopment on that site, you know?
No, absolutely, and that's why it'll take us a period of time to have a very robust position going forward. But the next submission, fundamentally in respect to the project, the wider infrastructure, etc., will need to be absolutely watertight.
We're always wasting our time, mate.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Rosemary McCormick.
Thanks, Chair.
Sorry.
Don Carl, thank you for the presentation. Well, I welcome the fact that there's going to be, I take it it'll be a comprehensive consultation.
Yes.
And something that will be very robust, because there is a wide community there, and you know there are many views. So I welcome that. Can I ask, given that the application was, there were like, did you say 10 grounds on which the judge queried it and rejected it?
There were 10 grounds formed the basis of the case brought forward by Mora, a wide and ranging number of grounds, 10 in total, I believe.
Which were questioned?
Which were the planks of the argument, but it distilled down fundamentally to baseline capacity. A number of the grounds were found not to be held up in court, and circa 5 or so were.
Okay.
The key one was around baseline capacity, safety concerns associated with that, and then some 3 technical issues.
Will DCAL be participating in conjunction with DOE in that planning application, so that you know there won't be any shortcomings in a second application?
Absolutely. The system allows for pre-application consultations, and certainly after the review, and we held initial meetings with DOE. We will not cut across existing due process, etc. Fundamentally, as your committee member said, it's collectively the onus. It's imperative that this process is taken forward in a clear, transparent, technically 110% accurate manner.
Okay, and what would you see as a probable timeline? And I know it's a difficult one to predict, but what would you say the probability is for when this might start, presuming that you're saying later this year? I can't remember exactly when you said the application might be ready, but later this year. And when would you anticipate a start date if all the ducks were in place?
Well, we're waiting for the GA and their team to confirm a number of technical points that we spoke about that will fundamentally influence, I suppose, the detailed timeline. Certainly, our assessment as at today is that later on in 15, planning submission will be good. I would personally anticipate around the August period. After that, we would be into the planning process, which in turn involves consultees and a number of other key stakeholders in terms of road service, etc. Suffice to say, given the scale of this development and the previous history of this development, as we would expect with every application, it will be a fully robust interrogation and process to step through. I wouldn't be in a process, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on how long I would expect and other departments and associated consultees to take with that. But certainly we would be hopeful that we could be stepped through in such a way that would allow commencement on site in early 16, in the early part of 16.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, William Humphrey.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Rory, for your presentation. Rory, whenever you were in front of us the last time in DCAL, I think you were very confident that you were going to win the court case. I'm
not. I think I may have given a personal view on terms of outcomes, but
certainly the view that a lot of us were left with. But I'm not going to. Don't worry about that. I'm not going to pursue that. But what went wrong with the consultation process that is there at the moment? Given what you have the evidence you've given this morning, I mean, what went wrong with it that there were so many points that the judge was able to make?
There was a limited number of points, to be fair. I mean, 10, it's normal that a wide, varied number of planks were brought forward in an argument, but fundamentally they were distilled throughout the course of the hearing down to a core number of issues. and I can split that very at high level between baseline capacity and the associated sort of safety, access and egress, and then three other areas around the technical process of the project team, all of which are clearly measures were in place to overcome. It was how just the content of those had been conveyed and communicated. So
If it's on that conveying and communicating, I mean, what went wrong there?
Ignored it.
Well, again, I mean, I think there was some confusion, and the JR process it's frustrating that the things like the Japanese knotweed, for which there's fundamental legislation and rights and common law, and our design had been predicated on accepted industry best practice, that what we need to do going forward is make sure that from an engagement process there's no misconceptions around steps to be taken, liabilities, or any other sort of undertakings.
How do we get to the point where the people who have concerns, who live in and around and about the stadium, that their concerns are addressed? How do we get to that process?
I think
that's not your responsibility. I accept that.
Yeah.
But it's the GAA's, but this is taxpayers' money that's being expended, so it's important that we, get it right.
Yeah. I welcome in the past few weeks the groundswell and the establishment of a new group in support of the Casement Park project, Residents for Casement Park. The existing Mora group that brought the action had a limited number of members. Clearly, by the good work on the ground, the support for the Casement project that is becoming more and more evident needs to crystallise.
Yeah, I accept that, but you still have all those people have genuine concerns, even though there's another group that you have to deal with the concerns of the people who are the objectors. And can I just return to the point that the chair made in terms of the mass scale and design? You were saying that the judge said they weren't flawed.
The ruling found no technical issue with how that had been assessed by the planners. I believe as whether the merits from an architectural aesthetic point of view is silent on. But
so if we have this maximum capacity of 38,000, and then you talked about a baseline of 32,000.
No, the 32,000 was the existing safety certificate that Casement Park was in possession. Was in possession at the time of the application. So Casement Park, prior to redevelopment, had a safety certificate from the council for circa 32,000.
That's standing.
And
principally.
Absolutely. That's the technical mechanism by which that certificate is in place.
Yeah.
So the thrust of the ruling around baseline capacity tested the appropriateness of relying on that certificate.
So given what you know in terms of the design mass scale and all of that, and the GAA's desire, and I understand that, to maximise the capacity, how do we get to the point that we get what everybody wants, get the project over the line without addressing the issue of reducing the capacity?
Well, I think we'll step through the exercise we're carrying out at the minute, which is the technical assessment of the data to support a robust position to take. And then, in reality, I'm happy to come back to the committee in a period. I would suggest it'll be 5 to 6 weeks, where certainly by then we'd be in a position to reaffirm the direction of travel with the new application.
See, I listened to what you said. You said the full action plan in place, and you mentioned robust case twice. Should that not have been a robust case after a full action plan before we got to?
It was, and again, just to come back, the core thrust of this is this action was against the DOE planning. GAA were a notice party, and the department weren't. We're satisfied in terms of what the project delivered. It's fundamentally disappointing and frustrating. So we're looking to support both GAA and the DOE going forward in this.
Okay, so finally, Chair, may I ask, in terms of the legal advice that was given to GAA or to the DOE, which presumably was shared with you since you're the sponsoring department in terms of the actual spend. It was absolutely clear-cut legal advice that the case would be won in the JR.
No, I'm not aware of any legal advice that will give you a 100% guarantee that.
Indeed, that's why we have to employ them at such an exorbitant rate.
No, absolutely.
Okay, did the legal advice that the DOE got suggest that the case would be won by, you know?
The legal advice showed strengths and weaknesses in the argument being forward. It acknowledged it was a complex case because of the safety certificate, baseline capacity, established rates, etc. It would be factually wrong of me, and it wasn't the case that there was any clear fundamental this will be okay. The legal advice.
No legal advice ignored, though.
No, absolutely not.
The word finally. There's a dictionary definition.
Finally. Sorry.
A dictionary definition of the word finally. Yes. Rosamund McCrae.
So, one of the things Roy has come up in this presentation is the word robust has been used not just twice but about 20 times, and it sort of seems that you're a wee bit on the defensive on the issue, which is, you know, like I don't think you need to be. It's just unfortunate about what happened.
It is.
And so, just in terms of not having to cloak things, if I can press you a wee bit. So the real problem on all of this was the baseline capacity was assessed at 32,000 on the basis of a fire certificate.
A safety certificate.
A safety certificate. And those people that opposed would have argued that was not the correct, that was not reliable or not appropriate to set a baseline, that the baseline should have been lower than 32,000?
That was an outcome of the ruling as opposed to a plank in the applicant's argument.
So, but the fundamental issue I'm trying to establish here that you've had to address is, if say, I don't know what the figure is, say that the baseline figure turned out to be 25,000, then the submission that's been made about egress and safety supply, issues and all that sort would have been having to lift it from 25,000 to 38,000 as opposed to 32,000 to 38,000.
Correct.
So what you're currently looking at now, I guess, therefore, is whether you can establish that the 32,000 figure is a correct baseline figure, or if it isn't, what it is and how you would deal with the safety and egress issues. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you thought that you might be able to get that resolved by when? I mean, what there'll be a process going through. When would that likely to be resolved?
I think the position would be clear within 2 months.
Within 2 months, okay. That's the major issue. Can I just check? You mentioned, I think you said 5 issues of substance that came down, 3 of which were technical issues. Without confusing me, could you just give me a quick run of what the 3 technical issues were?
Japanese knotweed.
Okay, I got that one.
Potential asbestos contamination in the ground.
Okay.
And the third was the ancillary uses of the stadium and whether the definition of ancillary and the terminology used in the green form that was submitted in the planning.
Okay. So if we take those 3 and we take the baseline capacity, was there, you said 5, was there one other one?
Safety concerns, which ties fundamentally in with the 38,000 and safe access and egress.
Okay, so I got this. So we then come to the issue about mass and scale, which you'll forgive me if I don't get this right, but obviously you'll have issues for high balls and things like that. But there was a sort of discussion about further. This is not the right language, but whether it was 2-story or 3-story, there was some concern about the actual mass of the building, wasn't there?
I think the broad plank of that in the residents' argument was around 38,000 stadium is not appropriate, and ergo tying with that was the scale and mass required. In court, we shared and demonstrated how previously through the design process in the early stage of this project, the scale and mass had been reduced to take on board residents' sort of concerns, etc., and culminated in the final design that was submitted. So there is no intrinsically direct correlation between capacity and mass. Fundamentally, if there will, however, come a point that if a number was so low, you would reach a point where you'd say, well, that needs to be fundamentally redesigned. I don't believe that is and will be the position.
But you don't think the mass or the scale of the building is actually the problem? You've been able to, that went through the judicial process.
It went through the process. Clearly, it's an emotive and a very real issue for the residents, for certain residents in the area. In terms of the engagement process going forward, that has to be recognised, and any opportunity, to further incorporate any potential betterment.
But in the way that you have to and will be addressing the capacity issue,
yes,
you would be less pressed on having to address the mass and scaling issue, because that's not found to have been an issue in the judicial review. Obviously, you want to talk to people, but
that's correct.
But
that's correct.
It is, yes. So the fundamental position then goes back in is that you would assess that if you are able to handle the actual safety issues, and presumably that's to do with people being able to evacuate the building quickly enough and so on, that's the key issue that has to be dealt with.
Absolutely. And the surrounding infrastructure.
Yes, all of which should be manageable, really.
All of which should be. If I can use the analogy, there's two aspects. There's the bricks and mortar aspect, which need to be fundamentally embedded into the design. And then there's a number of arrangements that would need to be put in place from an operational level to support it. The planning process will take cognizance of both. But clearly, the bricks and mortar and the design of that is one part of the equation. The other part of the equation around park and ride facilities, etc., and how the infrastructure responds is an operational based response, and it is the normal process that carries on sort of post planning securement, and you develop the detail of it as we've done Rugby and Windsor Park.
Okay. Thank you. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
David Hilditch.
Thanks, Chair. And Williams asked a fair bit around the degree of confidence there was, both not just at the last presentation of the Causeway building when we had our meeting down there in December, but at ministerial and departmental level, and I'm sure you have taken cognizance of that and reassessed how you move forward. Some of the questions have already been asked, but you had mentioned on the financial side of things that the 6.7 million spent up until the end of this financial year. Are there any contractual obligations beyond that which will add to that 6.7 before you indicate we're going to get on site? Maybe we'll plan in August, on site maybe early 2016, but are there any other contractual obligations before that that have to be met?
I think it's important to note there are existing live contracts in place, both the design team and the building contractor. The planning submission will require further work by members from both of those parties and organisations, as well as ourselves and the GAA. So that is part of the ongoing process between now and the submission and the planning. That will accrue costs, they will incur costs, and there the costs certainly will be reflected in the projections of the DFP.
Potentially by the summer we may have lost 10 million.
No,
out of the 62.5. Fair to say, or?
No, the scale, and a fair analogy may be, and especially it's validated by the fact that the scale and mass, etc. We've done the majority of the detailed design development, so that work has been done, carried out, paid for, publicly tendered, etc., etc. So it's not resetting the clock in the same proportionate spend. The extra over cost of revisit the planning arena is no, absolutely not. It's not a reset in the clock and start again with the same level of fees, etc.
Okay, but then the roughly 7 million which will be have been spent then, that'll have to be rebid for then.
Yes,
Well-
through the technical accountancy process.
Okay, and again, there was a confidence that that would have been there as well. Are we hesitant on that now, or do you still think?
Within the 17 million, there was an assessment of some capital, should we be successful for an early start in 16. But certainly, we're taken forward in terms of the front end work for the progressive planning.
One question I have there, in terms of the previous round of work, which then went into the JR, there was no anticipatory work in a sense done to address the spend profile problem then when it ran into difficulties. Is any work being done at the moment to cover this potential for a successful objection this time? I mean, it was an issue we only brought out at the end last time, but I think it's important now at the start of this new process that the department doesn't allow itself to get into a position where you come down towards the end of the year next year and suddenly you hit the buffers and...
Yeah. I sort of note the point. As we did this year, because of the money allocated solely to the regional programme, we've moved within that, we've reprofiled, etc. Within that, Ravenhill's at a position where it's a hard, finalised number. Windsor Park's excellent progress, very tight projections. We cannot allocate within the department the casement money for other capital programmes outside of the regional stadia. So all we can do is keep in constant dialogue with DFP, give any early warnings as best as possible, and track it through the forthcoming
You
period.
can't move money from the three main stadia across to the sub-regional
Or any other capital programme.
or any other capital. Just one point there.
Can I just ask Windsor
right,
Park,
Windsor.
Rory? In terms of the railway stand, which is fairly well up, and I put this to Jeff Patterson at the All Party Football Group. In terms of the qualifiers that are coming up, I put to ask you this. I think we had Ravenhill, which could be open, stands could be open and then closed because they weren't quite complete. Given that in Windsor they have used temporary stands, if we have a structure there and if the seats are in for March, for example, could that be used if the health and safety issues were addressed? Because it's important in terms of qualifying, maximising the attendance and the support, because you hear the players often saying about the crowd, Windsor being a 12th man.
Absolutely, it's common on all sport, the motive support and,
Yeah.
and the atmosphere and the performance on the night fundamentally. As with Ravenhill was sought to for very little extra over interim cost to maximise and get that extra few thousand people in. Fundamentally, absolutely, that's been the thrust at Ravenhill. It is the thrust. It's in the detail of the planning, and at every board meeting, I can assure you, within the AFA, it's a constant topic. What will be in place for March, the June games? What state will the roof be in, given it's March? Fundamentally, not only from a performance, but logistics around working towards securing the licence for the highest capacity number, the ticket sales, etc. That's an inherent part. So I would confidently say the strategy on Windsor Park mirrors exactly what you've outlined.
Because
every endeavour.
Wouldn't worry so much about the roof because there's a roof on the temporary stands. I know that's all very well. My seat does have a roof over it, but I think that if we can get people there, they'll not worry about the roof. Thanks.
No, absolutely. I think it's predicated by an overall call on the value for money that it represents.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Rory. I appreciate that. It's reassuring to know a roof over Williams' seat. That's
Personally.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, that's great.
to the door quick.
Thank you, Chair.
Nice one. What's the appreciation cost?
Okay, thank you. Are there any actions that members wish to take? Or are you content to leave it there for the moment? We'll hear in 5 or 6 weeks' time about the figure then for the capacity. Okay. Brings us on to matters arising, and I would refer members to correspondence tracker at page 121. Refer members also.
Chair, there's a correspondence there from Ofcom.
Haven't got there yet.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Right.
Just give me a shout.
Next thing then is referring members Ofcom, page 122, following the briefing. They have confirmed that it's not planned for Radio Foil's coverage on FM to be extended. However, the BBC is investigating the inclusion of Radio Foil Digital. Ofcom has also confirmed that stations pay an annual broadcasting fee of £600, but they are also required to have a Wireless Telegraphy Act licence costing £250. And finally, Ofcom is considering holding an event in Parliament buildings to highlight how they investigate complaints made about TV programmes. Yes, Helen?
No, Chair, just there was a question that I'd asked of Jonathan Rose regarding coverage of Radio Foil, but I'd also previously brought this up with Tony Hall, and he said they were actively looking at the extension of the coverage. So just could we write to
some clarification?
So I guess so,
BBC,
yeah.
the BBC.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members content and interested in the idea of an event there in Parliament buildings to highlight investigation of complaints?
Great, yeah.
Okay. Refer members then to the Economic and Social Impact Study for the 2013 FLA at page 123, forwarded from Brent McAleer-Caldas following his presentation to the committee last week. Page 126 details the high level of satisfaction across a range of categories from the attendees, and the PSNI has estimated that over 430,000 visitors attended the FLA over the 7 days. It's the largest turnout for this event in the last 5 years. Public money invested in the FLA was in the region of 1.1 million, while the economic benefit of the FLA was in excess of 33 million. The figure includes the PR and media yield that has a national and international reach, bringing visitors to Londonderry and its surrounding areas. Just in passing, I did note there, it's interesting to see there on in terms of spend. In terms of spend there on page
Just
one,
reaffirming the point you were making.
what about the roof over your seat? On page 133 there, the breakdown, they spent over $250,000 on promotions, marketing, communications. And it's just something around that issue of events, if they're going to draw crowds and really be successful, there has to be that build-in of money for marketing, otherwise you don't get the return. I think that's a lesson that needs to be learned by a lot of organisations. It's probably one of the reasons why attendances at some events are not what they should be. It's just interesting to have a ballpark figure of the sort of money that needs to be invested to make something a real success. Then brings us to page 190, which is the letter from the Ulster Scots Agency there regarding decal correspondence. They make the point there that there are difficulties extracting information from some departments. And if we bear in mind, this goes back to something that William raised back in, I think it was in the springtime, and then the agency wrote to all departments in August last year. So we're actually 6 months down the road, and we're still trying to get answers, or at least they're trying to get answers for us, about spend across departments. It is I think, a cause for concern that some departments have been slow. Other departments, the issue has been around bringing back nil returns. And that's very unlikely that there's a nil return department. So there may be issues around understanding what the question was. I think that they're going back on that, but they are going to keep us informed on progress.
Presumably they didn't ask the question, Alistair Scott, so the question would have been clearly understood. I suspect that there isn't so much difficulty in understanding what the question was. There's a reluctance to answer it.
I think that is the point, exactly.
And so therefore, could I make a suggestion or a proposal, Chair, that you write directly to Dr McKibben around this issue? Because Ian, if I read this, you wrote to the agency. The agency has come back to you saying that Dr McKibben, head of the civil service, wrote to the department. But if there's a reluctance or there has been no response, should we write then directly to him?
Might be useful to just get it. It might be useful also to get a copy of the letter that went to the department, so we know what was asked for, so we know why people put in nil returns. You go around in these things in circles for meeting after meeting after meeting. Would members be happy that we request that information?
Yeah.
Okay.
The original letter, yes, Chair.
Yes, a copy of the original letter, and just to say we're keen to get this resolved. Okay, thank you. Next thing then is page 193, which is the January monitoring paper. Considered at last week's meeting, Mr McRae asked for details of the £1.35 million capital spend, or capital bid. The breakdown of that can be found at page 197, and that's around 380,000 for the Beat Carnival premises in Millfield, 12 self-service kiosks for libraries in urban areas of high social need, hopefully with some contribution from Dard, and then 200,000 for National Museums estate maintenance, and then 250k for the City of Culture legacy work to fund minibuses, event delivery equipment and IT equipment for community centres.
If I remember correctly, is this 1.35 million not put all down though as legacy capital?
It was, Chair, it was described as PET PSE, promotion of equality, tackling
poverty.
Tackling poverty and social exclusion. It was a banner title, but then there was a detail on some of the spend. It's not all of the spend. What it is the bigger projects, and then smaller projects where there may not be detail available for those yet, will take up the rest of the money. But it was under the bid was put in under PET PSE.
But does anybody ever evaluate? I mean, I don't know what the Beat Carnival premises in Millfield actually is. Maybe somebody that's familiar can tell me.
It's a former
factory.
And what are we going to do with it?
It's being used at the moment as that's where the Beat Carnival people operate and create all these giant models that you see at the Lord Mayor's show and things like that. They do community projects or create those things with community projects.
Okay, well, I've got the answer, but I'll have a look and come back. It was the reason why I asked is 1.35 million at a time when we were short of cash just came in, and you want it for, and it is part of this thing where people just have got a bit of money and they decide they're going to spend it on something. It just needs to be more strategic in its.
I think that part of the issue there is it's about purchasing and refurbishing the old factory. There was uncertainty about the long-term future of what somebody might do with the factory, and I think there was as far as I know, there was it's actually in West Belfast rather than North, but as far as I know, that there was local community support for this. But it's a thing. If we can arrange for a visit at some point to the Beat Initiative when they get some heat in the place that we could actually sit through.
I just one last thing. It's just that these things get slipped through. Our thing is for scrutiny, and you get in capital equipment as well for City of Culture legacy work. Now, I'm not against legacy work or the City of Culture or anything like that, but you know, I do wonder, £250,000 for, it's just so general, fund equipment, cultural hub strands, e.g. new minibuses, event delivery equipment, IT equipment. It's just a smorgasbord of things that we'd like to put in, and all I'm really concerned about is it part of an agreed strategic spend of money? That's the thing, or is it just there is money left at the end of the year, we've got capital available, let's spend it on something? But I will look into it separately, and I'm grateful for you bringing it up.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Brings us on then to correspondence. It's on page 199, and no, 199. Yes, sorry, we've got, that's the press release, sorry. That was the press release that was put out on the day of the last committee meeting. We have since written to the department about the makeup of that, and to seek some additional representation to get a more inclusive approach. So we'll hear back in due course about that, if members are content to wait. Decal forecast outturn to March 15, and the actual outturn to November 14 is at page 200. Members have any queries in regard to that? It runs over several pages there. Okay.
Could somebody explain page 203 to me?
In what, Chair, in what respect?
What are the percentages against budget? Tell me.
Well, that's spent against budget already.
So what is that telling me? Good things, bad
Telling
things?
you good things. The department has, certainly as long back as I can remember, been on target in terms of its estimated spend and then ultimately its actual spend, and it looks from the figures that it will still be on target, possibly even maybe slightly under. We can.
I mean, what we're supposed to be checking up on this, is are they on target? So all that's telling me, that 71% for administration, was that 3/4 of the way through the year they were only at 71% of spend. So assuming there was no seasonality, you'd say this is good because you're under target, but there may well be seasonality. And what is actually a more useful figure is, given that you actually have the forecast spend of January to March, is that the January budget position of 7,053? That's what they're expecting the outrun to be at the end of the financial year.
At the end of the financial year, yes.
So it would be more interesting for me to know, how does that figure compare with their budget, with their figure?
Am I getting the point you're making here as it's how the figures are laid out?
Yeah, it doesn't. That doesn't help.
If they could actually put,
if there was a column with the expected outturn for the full year rather than just for the quarters.
No, well, it just happens to be as we're in the last quarter that we can do it in this one. But in general terms,
yeah.
If you have £7,053 million for administration, assuming that's what you get, is that above or below your budgeted figure?
So if you take their resource, 29,555 to be spent in January to March, what percentage is that of the budget? And therefore, when you add that percentage to the 70%, you know what percentage is unspent or going to be unspent.
Yeah, well, it's basically so you can, yeah. I mean,
so it's how if it could just be set out, if we could pass that message on.
We can talk to the department about how that's set out, and we can work out with them additional columns that would make that clearer. If members are content, we
happy enough with
on that.
Okay, thank you. Next one then is page 204 with a page there. The investment strategy for Decal is at page 204. This report includes the procurement activity of construction contracts, including that of GAA Regional Sports Stadium, with a construction completion date, yes, of December 2015. That's good. What happened? However, we just simply noted, I suppose, at this stage.
Yes, that's a date still to be worked out. That's an indicative date. Very indicative at this stage.
Then page 208 is the next one there, which is the investment strategy for NI investing activity report. And decal 25 projects with 100 within the 158,000 to 224,000 bracket. Are there any questions people have in regard to any of those issues that are raised there? Quite a bit around libraries and so on. No? Probably enough.
All of the spend is libraries. Yeah, that's why decal always has so many projects going, because a lot of the spend is updates in library.
And then page 212, EU Matters is there.
Noted.
Noted. Page 217, correspondence with Sport NI regarding section 75 consultation on new and revised policies.
Great.
Any particular policies come out of that? New capital investment programme and corporate plan they're currently consulting on. Okay.
That was the one they talked to.
Which brings us then down to 218 over the page, which is National Libraries Day, 7th of February, and you're encouraged to go along to your local library, get your photograph posted on social media after you've been to the library and taken a book or whatever, or read a book or read a newspaper or whatever in the library. So encourage the support for the local libraries in that way.
If the library's open,
I'm sure the one in Bangor's open to all sorts of hours. It gets special treatment with anybody else.
He goes into
So
comments.
whatever, what happened to World Poetry Day? They took part in a number of years ago.
That's. Is that? I'm trying to remember the date of that.
That's a different day in March.
It is March, so we would anticipate in. I think libraries always. Chair, my recollection is libraries do something with that every year. We will do, Chair. We'll go back and find out what exactly, because we have done that before. We celebrated that before. Libraries are usually very good at telling us when they're going to do these things. We find that one out.
Okay.
Sometimes you got away without wage.
March 21st.
March the
March
20th,
21st. So we
is-
check with libraries what they're going to do.
Poetry Day. So we'll check with libraries on that.
What was that one? Poetry Day?
Then brings us down to table correspondence from Libraries NI regarding the quarterly screening of their policies. That's been tabled. Sorry. Just give me a second to take that out here. All I can get was, oh yeah, sorry, at the back. Microsoft Windows security policy, internet security, it's all security policies there.
They have a number of policies they screen on the quarterly basis, and they send us their update on it. These are ones that members have heard about over various periods, and we've had libraries in to brief us.
That's fine. And the other, there's correspondence in there regarding Midgley Park. See, and Ballon d'Or from Patrick Nelson.
What number's that?
That's,
sorry, William
that's
Campbell.
table pack. That's also table pack. It's the first one in the table pack.
Simply noting there, as you're aware, the Olympic Leisure Complex project will result in the demolition of the existing leisure centre and the development of a new community leisure complex adjacent to the West Stand, sharing a roof with it. Are you content with that? Or those who have, see, we lost one.
Well, just in terms of the Midgley Park itself, as part of the agreement between the FM Council and Infield, the pitch will disappear at 3. There's no mention there, Chair, of, and that's one of the reasons I wanted the letter to go. There's no mention there, for example, of a stand.
At Midgley Park?
Yep. My understanding is that there's part of the agreement, there's a stand to be built. So that for some games, why would you open a big stadium if for some games that you would use the smaller stadium with the smaller stand? No mention of a stand there.
Well,
But can I let it sit for the moment, and I'll clarify. I need to raise it again. I'll raise it perhaps next week. If that's okay.
that's fine indeed, okay. Again, then, if members are content to note that at this stage, and member will come back on that. Brings us down then to, I think, if I'm right here, Waterways Ireland correspondence, pages 219 to 251 regarding Lough Erne bylaws. The new bylaws ensure that public moorings are not used as private permanent moorings. Also, the current speed restricted areas are to be increased. Other issues regarding Waterways Ireland have been raised, and all correspondence has been included in the members' packs from page 228 onwards. Anyone has any point there? Tell that. Okay. Brings us on then to chairperson's business, and the committee office has received an invitation from OFM DFM to a Landscape Institute seminar on the 9th of February in the Long Gallery. That's at page 253. Please let the committee office team know if you plan to attend. Forward work programme then, page 257, and the clerk will speak to that.
Chair, just to remind members that next week, the 5th of February, the committee's going to be meeting at the House of Sport, Sport NI's headquarters. We're also going to look at the Dub and New Forge while we're there as part of the movement that Sport and I are trying to organise around a shared facilities strategy. And members will recall that the committee has looked at this from a number of different angles. We've written to schools, colleges, universities and so on. And the committee has long advocated a kind of corporate use of facilities and as much sharing as possible. So Sport and I, basically it's an opportunity for them to give us an insight into their two most local facilities, how those would be shared. We're going to have a bus for that as well. So we'll have a bus leaving here in Parliament Buildings, and that'll then move us around where we need to go as well. And we'll have lunch, I think at New Forge, while we're there, and then the bus will be coming back here. So if members, we'll send out an email on the bus. The bus will leave here about 9:15. We should be back to the building before 2 o'clock. It should all be. To remind members too, the other item, particularly on the agenda of that day, is around defibrillators. This is one of the issues that members wanted to pursue as part of our strategic planning session. We're having a gentleman who teaches in a local primary school is part of the Defibs for Kids campaign. It's been very successful. Ultimately, they want to see a defibrillator in all schools and at all sports grounds as well. He's going to come and talk to us about that campaign and how it's actually worked on the ground, and there'll be some practical examples as well. And the other thing to flag up again to members, I'd sent out information on this, is 26th of February, it'll be a visit only to Brain Injury Matters. We're not going to be able to have a meeting there, but it'll be a visit only, and I'll talk to members again about that closer to the time.
Chair, just in terms of the defibrillator issue, that I know that I was vice chair of the all-party group on congenital heart issues, and there are others there who will be very much involved. The GAA actually led the defibrillator revolution, for want of a better word, in terms of sporting facilities, but also some of the larger retail outlets have provision there, which a lot of people don't know anything about. So maybe it might be prudent to widen that remit.
Chair, our intention had been this was a first kind of briefing. The angle being because it's being done through a school with school children and as part of a learning process. And then our intention had been to widen out from that, but this was just so we could get a first briefing done. And then subsequent to that, we do more. Initially, when members had talked about this, there was some suggestion that this could actually be made into a bigger campaign and potentially look at the idea of legislation for all schools having to have a defibrillator and all sports grounds or clubs, and that's kind of where we wanted to go. But this was just a local example to the area there, and it just seemed to be a good way to start.
I still think there's a gap in provision in terms of, because it's dependent on the likes of community groups like the GA and others to actually provide those within the communities, and again some of the larger shops which on this.
What I'm hoping to get out of this one is the campaign has started in schools, but they're also taking it out into local communities too. And it's a good starting point for looking at things more widely.
Chair, that's on next week then, as part of the
That's
visit?
next week, yeah.
Yes.
Right,
And we're meeting here at 9:15
for the bus.
For the bus.
That's AM.
AM. Thank you, Leslie, for that helpful.
You were late last night.
told us you were going to be
I was indeed,
Yeah.
That's right, I know.
the rest of it.
and there was good reason for that.
Yeah, William, when you make
What's
it.
your bag?
Lost your handbag.
have a pre-meeting.
No, I won't take a bag to go to the Dub or the New Forge area. I will not be staying. Next brings us on to now any other business. No other business has been highlighted. It has now.
In light of what the presentation today on the Community Festival Funds, can I ask that a letter be sent to the Minister highlighting the public consultation that's coming out on the Community Festival Fund and highlighting the fact that councils have not got their community plans in place. We may be going too early with all of this here because, and the lady did say it was a relevant point, that we need to be very careful that community plans are in place, that we get the right information back from the councils.
If it was framed in terms of what discussions have there been between DCAL and the new councils as to how this will be handled in the first year,
Well, councils haven't actually done their community plans, I know, because I've been, so if they're going out to public consultation.
yeah, but what I mean is that they've got the money this year. They're going to get the money next year. It's how they deal with it in the first year. Do they just continue things somewhat as they were? How do they put the...
Yeah, we need to just flag it up, but just in case we don't go too far in front of councils, that
Yes.
we're working in
Yeah.
tandem with
Okay.
councils, just in case
We'll
there's
put a letter to them on those general
Highlight.
lines. That's fine.
Thank you.
Councillor Nolan, right? Yes.
Separate issues, Chair.
Separate, right, yeah.
Chair, just, I brought it up at the start of the meeting, is there any way, any other business, was a agenda item last week and why it wasn't taken?
I think it was at 2 o'clock, and we were losing people. There were half the room was getting up and going. You know, I think at that point it was. I didn't actually pick up the fact that you had raised a point, and when I saw half the room leaving, I knew we were going to be coming for it. So there was really nothing else. I'm sure.
Can we sure it doesn't happen again, Chair?
I think none of us are infallible.
Pope like, I'm sure.
Oh, apart from my wife, nobody's infallible. No, I don't get something that. Sorry. Okay. Next meeting will be on Thursday, the 5th of February at 10 o'clock in Sport NI. Bus leaving at 9:15 and back at 2. And we're now about to get our presentation from Special Olympics Ulster from 4 of the folk involved in that. We're not doing questions. Sorry,
I've sent them something.
if members would just note, we're not doing question and answer on with this. It's purely a presentation from Special Olympics. 15.
Great.
This is the pack that it's got.
All right. It's got things in it.
Good things in it, yeah. Maria.
Yeah.
We're gonna get. Maria's gonna go for environment. They look up
Okay. Well, could I start off by thanking Special Olympics folk for coming along this morning to the committee, both those who are at the table and those who are in the public gallery area. We're very pleased to have all of you with us today. And we're going to have, first of all, a presentation. And at the table we have Jeremy Adams, the event's chairperson, Jill Connery, who's a golfer, Ursula MacDonald, a golfer, and Sean Cassidy, the regional director. And we're delighted to have your opening presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Members, Mr. Chairperson, thank you so much for having us here.
You can sit down.
Okay, right, okay.
We're very informed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's more relaxing sitting down. It's a fantastic opportunity for us here to speak at this committee, this CAL committee, and I know a few members around the table. I'm delighted to see them again. I'm Jeremy Adams, and I'm a regional committee member of Special Olympics Ulster. I'm also the European coordinator of the Law Enforcement Torch Run for Special Olympics, so I'm wearing two hats today. But can I introduce today to our Special Olympics crew today? We've got Roy, we've got Sean, we've got Peter, we've got Donal, we've got Brenda, we've got Dervla, Karen, Vicky, Mairead, Ursula, Carol, Victor, Mike, Jill, Jackie, and Kirst taking a few photographs. So we're all connected to Special Olympics Ulster, and so we're delighted to be here today to speak to you. You've got some packs there, and you've some information about Special Olympics Ulster and the World Summer Games that are taking place in LA in 6 months' time. You remember that the Games left the USA for the first time in 2003 when they came to this island. And I still have fond memories of Bangor on the 13th of June when the torch arrived and kick-started the Ireland Games in Bangor that year. So Games are returning now to America, which is the home of Special Olympics. And I'm quite fortunate that I also will be travelling to LA in July as part of the torch run team. So dreams do come true, along with two Garda Síochána officers as well, who will be taking part in an international team across California. The opening ceremony will take place on the 25th of July, and each day I check the weather forecast for LA. And today it's 22 degrees and sunny, as opposed to sunny Belfast, which is 5 degrees with snowy showers. So we have a number of athletes from Special Olympics Ulster here today who are LA bound, and their coaches and supporters. And the athletes from Ulster come from right across the region, from Belfast, Coleraine, Buncrana, Ballynahinch and Newnabbey, along with other places. As you know, sport plays a big part in Ulster. Whether it's Carl Frampton in the boxing ring or Rory McIlroy on the golf course, we all get behind our sporting heroes in this small part of the world. In July, we'll be following the progress of Team Ireland in LA and our Ulster members, of which we've got two sitting at the table here today, along with some behind as well. So we'll hear from them later on. But may I introduce the Regional Director of Special Olympics, Sean Cassidy, a native of Omagh, and he's been the Regional Director for Special Olympics for the past 8 years. So, Sean, over to yourself.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'd just like to echo the welcome and the thanks to the committee that Jeremy gave for giving us and Special Olympics the opportunity to sit before you, just to give you a little update on who we are and what we do, and also then to describe to you and give you a chance, I suppose, to sample a little bit, if you like, of the closed atmosphere that these guys can give to this room. But if you can multiply that by the number of 88 athletes at a training venue getting ready for Los Angeles, it's very electric, I have to say. It's a great occasion for all the athletes, and what I want to do maybe is to give you a little bit of a pause for thought. Although this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, I think it's sufficient to say that we're all looking forward to the progress of the Ulster team from Northern Ireland and Cavan Donegal and Monaghan, who will be joining the rest of Team Ireland to go to Los Angeles. I would like this. I suppose I would like at this moment to remind everyone in the room that with the true grit and determination that each of these people sitting here have whenever it comes to everyday issues, to overcome those everyday issues, and then to represent not only their hometown but also Ireland at the World Summer Games. Can I also pay tribute to the coaches who deliver, and Ursula sitting here beside me, who deliver the sports education in such a way that not only is it firm but is also fair, and in a way that's very understandable as well to the athletes with an intellectual disability, and that's evident in the sensitive way in which the coaches approach the training, and also pay tribute to the family members who, I have to say, I know some of them braved all of them braved the elements to come here today, but also not only do they brave the elements, but they also assist Special Olympics no matter what we ask, no matter if it's training at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 7 o'clock on a Saturday evening, or a residential event somewhere down the country to accommodate 88 athletes coming from all over the island of Ireland. They do not raise any questions at all, and they get on the road and they bring their sons or daughters to that event. So without this support, and I suppose the truly heroic everyday actions of the volunteers who tirelessly work to make the organisation what it is today, Special Olympics would not exist as the global movement that it currently does. So that's that initial, I suppose, setting the scene. What I'd like to do is just point you to the direction of this document to be part of something special. And it gives a little bit of a background to Special Olympics. Some of you will know that background already. Some of you may not. I won't go through the detail of it for you today in any great detail, but it's just to point out we are a sports charity. We assist those individuals with intellectual disabilities to partake in a sport of their choice. And our mission is to offer this opportunity to everyone who has an intellectual disability, and that's a global movement, so we have to take that mission obviously ourselves as well. At the moment, just to give you a bit of a flavour, the figures of those with an intellectual disability are not fact. We work on a basis that 1% of the overall population has of the overall population of Northern Ireland, if you like, has a disability. So 1.8 million people, 18,000 people, if you like, have an intellectual disability. We obviously, our mission statement indicates that we should see everybody with an intellectual disability in Northern Ireland, and at the minute we've 1,600 people, so we have a lot of work still to do. We know that the need is out there. So with our research, we can firmly state that Special Olympics in numbers, we started in 1978, so we've been going quite a considerable length of time. Hopefully there's another 38 years ahead of us. We have 2,148 athletes registered to the Ulster programme. 1,600 of those are based in Northern Ireland. We have 5,488 volunteers, which in anybody's books is a super number. Again, 3,000 of those thereabouts are active in Northern Ireland. 92 clubs in Ulster, which marks us as probably being one of the largest sporting organisations in Ulster. 62 of those clubs in Northern Ireland, and we offer 15 sports. Your usual sports that you would recognise: athletics, aquatics, some unusual sports like bocce. And I'm not going to explain what bocce is because I'm not an expert. But whenever it comes to taking part, and that's one of the requests that we have for yourselves today, is to get in contact with your local clubs and see, particularly bocce clubs, because it's fun. I don't know whether we don't have any bocce players here today to explain what that is, but we hopefully will do it at some stage. So we think that it's important that over the next year that we identify for yourselves what we'd like to do over the next year, and that is in particular 100 new athletes per year. We've shown year on year that trend analysis would indicate that our athletes are coming to us in 250 plus per year. So we want to see 100 new athletes a year. We want to develop 2 new clubs in Northern Ireland every single year for the foreseeable future. We know that the need exists. There are underrepresented areas: Castlereagh, East and North Belfast, Fermanagh, Tyrone. There are underrepresented areas, so we want to develop clubs in those areas. We want to encourage 150 new volunteers to register with the programme every year. We want to train those volunteers. We want to educate those volunteers in how to deal with individuals with intellectual disabilities, how to coach individuals with intellectual disabilities in a way that they understand and in a way that they can progress through our sporting cycle. We want to give the athletes here an opportunity to speak, to sit in front of groups like this and give a little bit of a flavour as to what it's like to be an athlete with an intellectual disability, striving to what it is, striving, if you like, to be the best in the world at their sport. We have a number of people here today who can do that, but it's fallen to Ursula and Jill to do that today, and also to Peter, just to give you a little flavour. And we want to build the Special Olympics programme not only locally but through schools through the promotion of opportunities for athletes and volunteers to come to events and experience what it's like to be part of the programme. I have in my pack a number of little bits and pieces, and I'm going to leave you to read that yourselves if you don't mind. There is a PR update with the organisation. It's very key that we give to yourselves a little bit of a flavour that we are active out there. We have hashtags, we have websites, we have all sorts of things. We want to keep that message about Special Olympics alive, and our call to you today is to see if you can assist us to do that. And we also then, our part of today is to launch or at least make you aware of the Sport and Athlete campaign. What I'm going to do now is hand you over to Ursula and Jill to say a little bit more about Special Olympics and give you a little flavour of their experience of the programme.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Jill and I play partner golf. So we play 9 holes, alternate shots. I have to be quite honest and say it's Jill who won this place to Los Angeles. She won a gold medal in Limerick at the National Games, but unfortunately for her partner, he was a man, and she had to have a female partner. Lucky for me. So I was able to fill the bill, and I must say I'm delighted to be going. When we get to Los Angeles, we'll be there for a fortnight, and we will be playing golf over 4 days. After the first 2 days, a divisioning takes place, which is a form of handicapping. So our scores will be looked at and will be put into certain divisions. And then we'll play 2 more rounds of golf, and the scores for the 4 days will be taken into account for our medals at the end. So we're looking forward to it very much, aren't we? We're looking forward to the plane journey, having a bit of fun, and watching a few films on the plane. And well, hopefully we'll do our best. We hope to bring back a medal, but we're certainly going to enjoy ourselves anyway.
So this is a very special moment when unified sports taking part here in LA. And we know Northern Ireland golfers do pretty well in America. Just ask Rory, Graham or Darren. But we've also got sorry, I forgot to introduce that Jill Connery comes from Scarva. If any of our members have come from there. And Ursula comes from North Belfast. Yeah. So there we go. And also introduced to Peter Fitzpatrick. Peter's at the back here. Peter, please stand up. Okay. Peter's from Drummoness, and he's going to LA to play in the football team with Team Ireland. So, Peter, can you tell us a wee bit about the soccer team and Team Ireland and how many medals we're going to win?
Well, we're going to America on July until August, and we're really looking forward to it. It'll be like a new experience. It's a 5-a-side, and I was with my Ulster team in Limerick there last year, and we won the gold medal, which was very good. And then in the club, play for Down Patrick, and we were Coca-Cola Cup, and we won the gold in that.
Good.
And we're really looking forward to going to LA to participate. Be very, very, very good.
Full of Americans.
Well done.
I think we all wish all our athletes well, and I'm sure we'll be following Team Ireland in July, and especially from Ulster. It's actually, I don't know if Peter knows, but we've got Robbie Keane and Stephen Gerrard as Special Olympics Ireland ambassadors, who now play in LA Galaxy. So they play for the wrong teams, obviously, but as in Spurs and formerly Liverpool. But hopefully they'll be a great thing for us. So Team Ireland will be meeting people from there as well. So it's a fantastic opportunity to be here and let you know a bit more about Special Olympics. I am sure there's some great knowledge around the table of what Special Olympics does, changing lives of people with intellectual disabilities, and that's really what it is. And behind every athlete, there is a coach, there is a family member, there's a friend. It's a massive family, the Special Olympics family, and across the world, it really is. It's really changing lives, what people do. And there's maybe not enough lives being changed. That's when we need your good selves to spread the word of Special Olympics and what it does and what it can change lives. And only a small people who can actually do take part. So there's work to be done across the whole island and in Ulster region as well. And just pay compliment Sean for what he does in Ulster, and the athletes and parents who are behind everyone as well going to LA. And it's going to be a great experience. And I know hopefully you'll tweet about us and Facebook about us, along with your constituency work you do there as well. Can we also thank Jonathan and Peter today for making this possible. It's a fantastic opportunity, and we may be back later to maybe launch the Team Ulster, maybe later in the year. Hopefully that's in negotiation, Sean and some colleagues. So thank you very much. This is part of the build-up for our LA bound trip. So thank you so much, and hopefully you'll join us for a photograph on the stairs and some lunch, and maybe get a chance to chat more with some of the athletes about their achievements in Limerick to qualify for LA and what's going to happen in LA. So thank you very much.
To join you in LA too, if you wish.
we meet in Hollywood.
Their sporting prowess would not be adequate. Look, thank you very much indeed for coming up today. It's been a privilege to have the team members and family and friends, supporters and so on with us today, and we're really looking forward to getting a photograph out on the stairs with you. So I think we'll adjourn the meeting at that point. We'll go out and get the photograph on the stairs of the Great Hall, and then after that there's lunch, always welcome, and that's in room 115. Thank you.